You visualize, you affirm, you try to vibe high, but the money doesn't come. The problem isn't what you're thinking. It's the internal format that's organizing everything underneath. In this video, you're going to understand the geometry that decides whether abundance flows or gets stuck in your life. And if you want to understand manifestation in a logical way, no BS, subscribe, because I post 3 times a week about financial blocks, mental reprogramming, and the truths nobody talks about when it comes to money. And leave a like so this video doesn't disappear in the algorithm. We grow up hearing that manifesting money is about thinking positive, visualizing, affirming, vibing high. They told you there's a secret, a technique, a code. And you really tried. You visualized, you repeated affirmations, you practiced gratitude, you meditated. But nothing changed. The money still isn't coming. Or when it does come, it leaves fast. You visualize wealth in the morning, but by the afternoon you're already worried about your balance. You affirm abundance, but you feel tightness in your chest when you think about money. You try to vibe high, but you spend most of the day in a state of scarcity. I've done all of this too, and at some point you start thinking you're doing something wrong, that there's some invisible step missing. But the problem isn't that you did it wrong. The problem is that something deeper is organizing everything underneath. And as long as that something stays twisted, nothing's going to work for real. But here's the first mistake almost everyone makes. Most people think the problem is what they're thinking, that if they think right, affirm right, visualize right, the money will come. But the problem isn't the content. The problem is the format. You can wake up in the morning and repeat, I am prosperous 100 times. But if your body, your attention, and your decisions throughout the day are organized in scarcity, that distorted format undoes everything. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes. Doesn't matter how much water you pour in, the format is wrong. And that format wasn't born yesterday. By the time you were 7 years old, you absorbed a script about money. You heard phrases, you saw behaviors, you felt emotions. And that became an automatic pattern, a program running in the background. You don't notice it, but it's there, deciding everything. That's why when money comes in, you feel guilt and spend it fast. That's why you say you want wealth, but you avoid looking at your balance. That's why you visualize abundance in the morning, but you make fear-based decisions all day long. The format is distorted. And here's the part that hurts. You're not failing because of lack of effort. You're failing because the internal format is twisted. And as long as it stays twisted, nothing you do consciously is going to hold. But there's a second mistake that's even more common. When people discover the problem is the format, what do? They try to fix just the thinking. They do more affirmations. They visualize more. They meditate more. They try to keep their vibration high all the time. But the entire format stays the same, because your body doesn't recognize abundance as real. You can repeat I am rich 100 times a day, but if your chest tightens when you think about money, your body is registering fear. And the body always wins. The nervous system doesn't care what you're saying. It cares what you're feeling. And here's the clearest sign that the format is still wrong, the anxiety. You keep checking if it worked. You look at the balance. You count the days until payday. You force. You control. That's not confidence. That's desperation disguised as manifestation. It's like trying to paint a crooked wall. No matter how nice the paint looks, the structure is still wrong. And the structure is what decides if the house stays standing. You can't think your way into a new reality. You need to reorganize yourself completely. Body, emotion, attention, action. Everything needs to be aligned. It doesn't work to fix just one part while the rest stays in the old pattern. But there's a third mistake that's the most serious of all. And this one keeps you stuck even when you try to change. You open the banking app. You look at the balance. You feel that tightness. You close it. You take a deep breath. And then what happens? You just collapse the state of scarcity again. Every time you look with fear, you reinforce the pattern you're trying to change. And most people do this 10, 15 times a day. They check the balance. They count the days until payday. They talk to friends about how tight money is. And every time they do this with that energy of lack, of tightness, of fear, they're feeding the format of scarcity. Because your attention isn't neutral. It's your internal measuring device. And when you measure with fear, you reinforce fear. When you observe from scarcity, you collapse more scarcity. You're not just seeing reality. You're creating reality through how you look. It's like holding a dirty mirror and complaining that your image is distorted. The mirror is your scared attention. And as long as you keep looking that way, you're not going to see anything except what you're already seeing. The format of scarcity feeds on your fearful observation. And here's the part that hurts. You can't change what you keep feeding. You can try to vibe high in the morning, but if you spend the day looking at your financial life from a place of lack, you're reinforcing exactly the pattern you want to break. So what actually works? But before I show you what works, let me tell you something. If you're realizing you have an internal pattern blocking your abundance, and you want to understand how to really reconfigure this deeply, I created an ebook that details exactly this process. It's not more surface level technique. It's a complete guide on how to identify the distorted format, how to unblock what's stuck, and how to reorganize your internal geometry so abundance flows for real. I used this in my own life when I was in the same cycle you're in. The link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. Take a look, see if it makes sense for you. Now back to what actually works. The truth is the problem wasn't what you thought, it wasn't just the thinking, and it wasn't reality itself. It was the format of how you were organized inside. There's an internal pattern that organizes everything, a geometry. And when that geometry is aligned, abundance flows. When it's distorted, nothing works. The mathematical code I'm talking about isn't a magic number. It's not a formula you memorize. It's the precise relationship between the internal elements of your life. When these elements are in coherence, you don't need to force anything. Because people who attract money easily aren't doing anything special. They don't have a secret you don't have. They're simply organized differently on the inside. Their geometry is aligned. And when you're aligned, opportunities appear without you having to hunt for them. You've experienced this. That moment when you had an idea and the same day someone called you with a proposal. Or when you needed money and an opportunity appeared out of nowhere. That wasn't coincidence. That was your geometry temporarily aligned. You were in coherence. And you already have this capacity. It's just distorted. Abundance isn't something you chase. It's the natural result of being in internal coherence. But what exactly is this geometry? How does it work in practice? The geometry of abundance has 4 axes: identity, emotion, attention, and action. And when these 4 are aligned, you're in coherence. When one of them is distorted, the whole structure gets twisted. Identity is who you believe you are. Not what you say, but what you feel deep down. If you repeat I am prosperous, but deep down you believe I always struggle, the identity is twisted. And as long as it stays twisted, nothing you do is going to hold. Emotion is what your body recognizes as real, not what you think about money, but what you feel when you think about it. If you feel fear, tightness, guilt, your body is registering scarcity. And the body always wins. Attention is where your focus goes throughout the day. Are you looking at opportunities or at financial problems? Are you seeing where money can come in or only where it's missing? Attention shapes what you can see and access. Action is what you actually do day to day, not what you plan to do, but what you do. If you visualize abundance but spend on impulse, the action is misaligned. And reality responds to action, not to intention. And here's the point. These 4 don't work alone. They're like the 4 legs of a chair. If one is shorter, the chair wobbles. You can't sit with stability. It's not about fixing just one thing. It's about aligning all 4 axes of your internal geometry. Now comes the practical part. How do you start aligning this geometry? First, you identify which axis is most distorted. Look at your life honestly. Is it identity? You still believe you're not good with money. Is it emotion? You feel fear every time you think about money. Is it attention? You only see financial problems. Or is it action? You spend on impulse even knowing you shouldn't. When you identify it, choose one specific pattern of scarcity that you're not going to carry into the future anymore. Not all of them. 1. For example, the guilt when money comes in, or the fear of looking at your balance. You choose one and decide that pattern doesn't cross over anymore. Then you practice. 10 to 15 minutes a day. It's not generic meditation. It's reconfiguration. If the identity axis is twisted, you practice feeling I am prosperous as real in your body, not just thinking it. If it's emotion, you feel anticipated relief, as if the money already arrived. If it's attention, you consciously direct your focus to opportunities, not to lack. And you change the ritual of how you observe your finances. You don't look 10 times a day with desperation. You look once, with clarity, without fear. You see the balance, you accept what is, and you direct attention to the next step, not to the tightness. And here's what separates those who understand from those who apply. You need to sustain this new state throughout the day, not just in the 15 minutes of practice, but in the small decisions. When you go to buy something, when someone talks about money, when you look at your account, you catch yourself going back to the old pattern and you readjust. You don't need to change everything at once. You start with one axis. You reconfigure 10 to 15 minutes a day, and you watch how the entire format starts to adjust. Let me show you how this works in practice with real examples. Think about two people. The first one always said, I'm not good with money. They spent on impulse. They checked their balance 10 times a day with fear. When they received money, they felt guilt. All four axes were distorted. Identity of failure, emotion of fear, attention on problems, uncontrolled action. Result: money came in and went out. Infinite cycle. Same person, 30 days later. They started reconfiguring. They practiced I am capable, feeling it as real. They trained their body to feel security instead of fear. They directed attention to opportunities. They stopped spending on impulse. At first, they went back to the old pattern several times a week, but they persisted. And they started saving for the first time in their life, not millions. But for the first time, the money stopped leaking. Or think about another person who always felt guilt when they received money. Script from childhood. When they got a raise, they sabotaged. When they sold something, they donated half. The emotion was stuck. After reconfiguring the emotional axis, they started receiving without guilt. And for the first time, they managed to invest what they earned instead of donating or spending to relieve the weight. Or think about two people looking at their bank balance. Same action. One looks with clarity, sees the number, accepts it, thinks about the next step. The other looks with tightness, feels fear, closes the app, has a bad day. Same action, opposite geometries, completely different results. The difference isn't luck. It's not privilege. It's internal geometry. But before you go out applying this, there are some warnings you need to know. Look, this isn't instant change. You've been carrying these patterns for years, sometimes decades. It's going to take time to reconfigure. And you're going to align the geometry, feel like it worked, and the next day go back to the old pattern. I did this dozens of times. It's not failure. It's part of the process. And another thing, aligned geometry without action doesn't generate results. You need to plan, work, make intelligent decisions in the real world. It's not sitting and vibing waiting for money to appear. It's aligning the internal format and acting with clarity. Oh, and don't use this as an excuse. I'm just going to align my internal geometry and wait. No. You reconfigure the format and you act. You don't choose one or the other. you do both. And look, those practices you were already doing, visualization, affirmation, meditation, they're not useless. They work better when the geometry is being worked on together. Alone, they're insufficient. With the format aligned, they amplify. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. You're reconfiguring your geometry, not trying to get everything right the first time. Now, the practical plan for you to start today. 21 days, 3 weeks to start reconfiguring your internal geometry. It's not a guarantee that in 21 days everything's resolved, but it's enough for you to start feeling the format changing. First week, you identify which axis is most distorted. Look honestly. Is it identity? You still believe you're not good with money. Is it emotion? You feel fear every time you think about finances. Is it attention? You only see problems. Or is it action? You spend on impulse even knowing you shouldn't. You choose one. Second week, you practice 10 to 15 minutes a day, every day. If the axis you chose was emotion, you practice feeling security instead of fear when you think about money. It's not thinking about it. It's feeling it as real in your body. You train your nervous system to recognize a different state. Third week, you sustain this new state throughout the day. When you go to buy something, when someone talks about money, when you look at your balance, you catch yourself going back to the old pattern and you readjust. It's not perfection. It's observing and correcting. And while you do this, you act in the real world. You plan, you make decisions, you resolve pending issues. Align geometry plus intelligent action, both together. You don't need more time. You need clear direction. Start today. Continue for 21 days. And observe what changes. You have the map. Now it's time to apply. If you apply at least one of the 4 axes I showed you here, your geometry is already going to be more aligned than it is now, and that already changes the format of how abundance arrives in your life. Now, if you want a complete process, step by step, to reconfigure all 4 axes deeply, I put together an ebook that details exactly that. It takes you from the point where this video stopped and brings you to the complete reconfiguration of your internal geometry, with practical exercises, daily rituals, and the complete map of the blocks you didn't even know existed. A lot of people who watched this video already got the ebook and messaged me saying they finally understood where they were stuck. The link is in the description and in the first pinned comment. If it makes sense for you, click and take a look. And tell me here in the comments, which of the 4 axes did you realize is most distorted in your life? Identity, emotion, attention, or action? I read all the comments and this helps me understand what to bring in the next videos. Subscribe to the channel because every week I bring content about manifestation, financial blocks, and mental reprogramming in a way nobody else talks about. And if you know someone who's also stuck in the cycle of trying to manifest and not being able to, send them this video. Sometimes simple information changes someone's financial trajectory. I'll see you in the next one.